Hey, what's up, you guys? My name is Grace Lauren Taylor, and you are listening to episode 58 of the Trauma Dump Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. Here at the Trauma Dump Podcast, we seek to answer the question, what is mental health? How do I take care of my own, and how do I support others? This week, we will be discussing the topic of how to regulate your nervous system with our very special guest of the week, Chloe. You can go follow Chloe on all forms of social media. It is at Chloe Goes Inward. That is at CHLOEGOESINWARD. Chloe is a chemical engineer turned wellness entrepreneur who has dedicated her career to the intersection of science, consciousness, and mental health. Chloe currently serves as the founder of Inward, a community that empowers women to heal from the inside out and expand to their full potential using somatic, biohacking, and manifestation tools. Chloe is also a content creator and the co-host of the Art of Expansion podcast, which I'm going to be on an episode. Can you believe it? I'm going to be on an episode of someone else's podcast. That's insane to me. But yeah, I'm going to be on the Art of Expansion podcast. I will give you guys more information when more information is available. So make sure you go follow Chloe on all forms of social media. It is at Chloe Goes Inward. And remember, if you'd like to share on the show, please message us in our Discord, in the podcast participants channel, along with your unique experiences, and we will match you to the right episode. And just a quick disclaimer before we start, though I have a lot of knowledge, I am not a mental health professional. This podcast only seeks to create community and further understanding of these topics that are so often overlooked and extremely misunderstood. If you or a loved one are in need of medical professional help, we have links in our description. The topics discussed here are for a mature audience, so viewer discretion is always advised. If you're liking what we're doing here on the Trauma Dump podcast, please make sure to hit that like button and click the subscribe button so you can get more videos of the Trauma Dump podcast. It really helps us out a lot. And if you want to click that notification bell, you will get notified every time we post a new episode. And just a reminder, we post new episodes of the Trauma Dump podcast every Sunday at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time. And if you're listening to us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, please rate the show. It really helps us out a lot, helping more people get this podcast. The algorithm is like, ooh, people are liking this podcast. Maybe I should send it to this person who's on a trauma healing journey. So if you want to support our podcast, you can do so by liking, subscribing, and sharing the show. That also helps us out a lot, helping you reach other people and helping us help other people become more trauma informed. And if you want to support our podcast in a different way, maybe monetarily, if you feel so inclined, we have a Patreon. Different tiers can get you a bracelet. That is a handmade bracelet made by me, Grace, with crystal beaded jewelry. Or you can get a sticker like the one on the back of my computer. Those links are in our description. Any support helps us out a lot. So if you feel compelled to, please support the podcast. So today we're talking about your nervous system. Okay, when we're going through trauma, a lot of people hear all the time, oh, your fight, flight, freeze response. That is a part of your nervous system. So your nervous system is your brain, your spinal cord, and then all the little nerves that like shoot out and tell your body what's going on. If you're getting poked in the arm, your body's like, hey, that's happening to my arm. If you're getting your arm chopped off, your body's like, hey, my arm is getting chopped off. We got to get a lot of adrenaline. Let's get out of this situation right now. And our nervous system formed as a way to keep us safe and alive in a time where we could be eaten or hunted. And there's just very extreme circumstances. And those extreme circumstances, though they still exist, are not as common. And so our nervous system still has the same response as if we are, say, getting yelled at by our boss and we might lose our job, as if the same to maybe we're backed into a corner and a tiger is about to eat us. Our body reacts the same exact way, which may have been healthy once upon a time, but no longer serves us in today's age of technology and, different social cues, stuff like that. So this week we're going to be talking to Chloe about her perspectives on our nervous system and how to regulate when we are in a dysregulated state and a very dysregulating world. Now, let's get into this episode. Hello, Chloe. Welcome to the podcast.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to talk with you today.
Thank you so much for coming on. It's so great to have you here. So, before we start the podcast, introduce yourself to our audience. Who are you? Where can we find you?
Hi, everyone. So I'm Chloe. Basically, my whole thing is nervous system regulation. I have spent my whole entire life learning how to get back into the body and create safety. So I work with people and I have my own online community that I teach people somatic skills, everything from breath work to EFT tapping. And I also talk a lot about like supplements and biohacking, all those goodies. So that's a little bit about me. And you can find me on Instagram and on TikTok at Chloe Goes Inward.
Amazing. Before we start the interview, what are your pronouns?
She, her.
Vibes. Are you comfortable with discussing your personal experiences?
Absolutely. I am an open book.
Awesome. To make sure I'm not crossing any of your boundaries and respecting your experiences, please feel free to interrupt me at any time if you feel uncomfortable, and we can also take a break at any time. And if you don't feel like answering a question, just let me know. I'll skip it because my priority is to make sure you feel safe at all times.
Awesome. Perfect.
My first question to you would be, can you explain what it means to regulate your nervous system and why it's so important?
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, your nervous system kind of consists of really two modes. So you have the parasympathetic nervous system, which is your rest and digest state, and this is where your body's kind of carrying out all of its like healing modalities. And then you have the sympathetic nervous system, and this is your fight or flight. This is when your body goes, okay, it's time to take action. And in a normal circumstance, we want our nervous systems to be incredibly balanced. We want it to respond appropriately when things happen in life. And when you have trauma or when you are chronically stressed or you're struggling with depression, what have you, your nervous system doesn't respond appropriately to your external world. And this is when you have dysregulation. So when you regulate your nervous system, you are bringing it back into a place of being in sync and responding appropriately to what's happening.
What are some common signs that someone's nervous system is dysregulated?
Yeah, so it can be hyperactive. So you are constantly stressed, constantly on edge, anxious, and this can show up in the body in a number of ways. Anxiety, panic attacks, even as far as like hair falling out, waking up in the morning with nausea, feeling constantly overwhelmed, paranoid. And then there's the opposite end of the spectrum where it's hypo-regulated, where you could be feeling depressed, apathy, lack of interest. You could also be very dissociative and disconnected to your body, or you can be existing in a freeze state.
I think that's really interesting to point out because a lot of people think of like fight or flight
Mhm.
and fight flight. They don't always think of the freeze or the fawn response. Would you describe to us what those individual four like modes are?
Yeah, absolutely. So when you have a traumatic, something traumatic happens or anything in life, you can either fight, which is like sympathetic. So that's a pretty obvious one. Flight is, I can't handle this, so I'm gonna run away. You have freeze where your body just completely shuts down. And then there's fawning. And fawning something I'm not like overly familiar with, but I do believe, Grace, and correct me if I'm wrong, if it's like more of like a people-pleasing skill set.
Mm-hmm. It
Yeah.
is. It is.
Yeah.
It's like especially common in narcissistic abuse. Is like
Hmm.
your abuser, you have to essentially please them and make sure that they're not going to hurt you. So like you're like, oh my gosh, yes, yes, you're right. I'm the most horrible human being in the whole world.
Yeah.
Yes, yes, you're so right. Oh, I'm such a burden to deal with. You are so amazing. Like like that. That's fawning, which I'm very accustomed to because that's what I had to deal with my mom.
Mm.
Going into your own personal experiences, why did you want to first, get into healing other people's nervous systems?
Yeah, because I myself had an incredibly dysregulated nervous system. So I think my first like big kind of introduction to capital T trauma was losing my dad when I was 11. And so it was sudden, it was unexpected. And when you're a young child, you develop these, we call them maladaptive coping mechanisms because there's adaptive and beautiful and powerful coping mechanisms, and then there's ones that are very negative. And so I think that's where it really all started, where I learned firsthand that I'm not always safe and that really bad things can happen. And so from that experience and from healing through that experience and going through the grief process, I developed a lot of anxiety in the
Mm.
body. And that continued to get worse as I got older, having, like a severely narcissistic relationship for a number of years. And so I never really had safety in the body. And I had all sorts of nervous system dysregulation issues, everything from panic attacks to chronic nausea to I used to be very dissociative. And I learned step by step how to get back into my body. And maybe just a step back too is I was put on like every medication you can think of, like everything from, benzodiazepines to SSRIs. And then I also have ADHD. So I was on ADHD medication, and then I couldn't sleep. So I was on sleeping medication. And I got really fortunate because I played university volleyball and I got sent to a sports psychiatrist. And so she sat me down and she was like, okay, you have all this going on, but she's like, I think you can actually learn how to manage this if you just learn how to breathe, if you learn how to get back in your body. And she was like my little angel. And this started this whole thing of like, oh, wait, I can do this without pharmaceutical drugs. And so I got really interested in the supplement space. I got really interested in meditation and breath work. And then that took me down this whole entire rabbit hole of like acupressure and EFT tapping, because I really want to show people that like you can be your own medicine. Like you have all of the tools within you and on your body to regulate your nervous system and like come back to feeling present and safe.
That is such a really amazing thing to point out, that you are the tool. You are
Mhm.
your own instrument. And
Yeah.
I do want to say I'm very sorry for your loss of your dad. I can comprehend what that's like. I lost my dad as well. And you lost your daddy so young. I want to go back to that. Like capital T trauma is a really good way to differentiate it from, trauma is something that happens to everybody. Everyone goes through different traumas. But when it came to losing your father and feeling overwhelm and anxiety, um, do you ever talk to the little version of you and continually try to heal her?
Yes, actually I do. I have this like very specific version of myself, and we can talk about it a little bit. Sorry, I picture myself as this like 11-year-old standing at the edge of this lake because my dad drowned in a boating accident, and looking out on the lake and feeling like my whole entire world just got ripped out of my hands, and being like, oh my God, like everything I thought I knew was different, not sure how to process it. And I meditate and I go back to her all the time and I just hug her and I hold her and I'm like, I got you. Like, I have done so much epic shit. Like, I've made a lot of mistakes too. Don't get me wrong. I have fallen and I've gotten up. But like, I go and I hug her and I'm like, I've got you. Like, you know, I have built a career, I have amazing friends, I have traveled the world. Like I go back to her all the time and I just hold her and I'm like, I got you. I got you, baby girl. Like I'm there.
Mm.
And I think the inner child healing is so, so, so powerful.
It really, really is. Do you ever try to connect with your dad?
Big time, all the time. So my dad and I were really, really close. Like my dad, I'm so grateful because I think a lot of people on this earth don't have incredible fathers. And I'm like, I had 11 years with like the best possible man and like model for what a father should be. He was incredible. And so I connect with my dad all the time whenever I'm, in a rough spot or just need guidance. And I'm like, Dad, just like send me a sign. And so I have this little like tattoo of a seven on my wrist. And so that's like my dad played sports. That was his jersey number. that was my jersey number. And I always say, I'm like, Dad, like, send me signs, send me sevens. And so I'm always kind of in constant communication with my father. And sometimes it's stronger and sometimes not so much. But I truly believe that when people move on into like a different, whether that's heaven, whether that's a different time space reality, a reincarnation, I think there's some kind of energetic signature that's left behind that we can tap into and communicate with.
That's a very good way to put it.
Mhm.
I really appreciate your openness about that, because losing your father is horrible. And I also had a very good dad. And so in a way that makes that loss almost greater, and also gives you an appreciation for what you had. Because yeah, a lot of people don't have strong male role models, let alone encouraging, supportive, compassionate, loving fathers, empathetic fathers. And it sounds like you really did have one. And it is a privilege to have one, but is also, a privilege to understand that grief and that weight of loss. How do you transmute that pain into purpose?
Oh, that's a really good question. So there's a number of ways, but I think like when it comes to transmuting pain, I think the first step is to feel it and to be with it and be in it. And I think this is something that we sometimes lose sight of in the manifestation community. We forget that step one is like you have to feel the pain and understand it or process it. There has to be some kind of sitting with it. And that part of the journey is a hell in and of itself. Um, but for me, it's been a lot of taking a step back and almost zooming out and having this meta perspective of being like, okay, this was awful, but what is this trying to teach me, or what gift is this trying to give me? And losing my father was a horrible experience, but it gave me so much. It gave me this profound appreciation for life. And I am so grateful for every day that I have on this planet, because I know that any moment, any second, it could be taken away from me. And I know that any person that I love can be taken away from me, which can be scary, but is also so much beauty because I look at people differently and I appreciate things differently. And that is such a powerful gift. And so there are so many things that I learned about grief and also my own grief journey, my own nervous system regulation journey. Like that's what made me who I am. And so there are so many awful, horrific things happening on the planet. But I think if you can step outside of it and be like, okay, like, is this maybe trying to get me somewhere else? Is this incredible pain that I've experienced? Now, can I take that pain and help other people heal? So I think there is always some kind of, I don't know if you want to call it silver lining, but there's something that happens when we go through these traumatic events that I think make us stronger and change us eventually when you can heal for the better.
We were talking about meditation and manifestation. For those of us that are listening that don't really have an idea of what manifestation is, could you give us a little synopsis?
Yeah, absolutely. I think of manifestation as just creating your own reality. Like you are just putting an idea out there and you are bringing it literally into manifestation. And so I think of like manifestation as, two pieces to it. There's the kind of thoughts become reality. So thinking about what you want and then taking action towards it. That's kind of my perspective of manifestation.
Mm, I think that's really cool, because I think manifestation, meditation is becoming, I guess, more into focus in the healing realm of people being like, okay, I'm manifesting it. I'm manifesting my future. Like, I hear my friends say all the time, they're like, I really want this. I'm just going to manifest it. I'm like, okay, girl, you go
Yeah.
manifest it.
Go on.
Yeah, your reality is your perception. Your perception is your reality. If you feel like everything is crap, then yeah, everything is going to be crap for you. But if you feel like everything is going to be going well, and you're only improving, and every step back is really just a change in direction of what you need to do, not a step back. It really does help your mindset. What are some of the daily practices that you have put into your own life that have helped you maintain a balanced nervous system?
Yeah, so there's a number of different things. When I work with people with nervous system regulation, I tell them that like the biggest thing is to create safety and presence in the body. And there's a number of ways to do this, but it's really important to have the basics covered. I think you need to be sleeping and eating properly and getting exercise, because if you don't do those things, you're not going to have safety in the body, like especially sleep. If you're not sleeping, if you're sleeping 2 hours a night, like your body's not going to be safe. It doesn't matter what you do. And so if you can cover those bases first, that's really important. And then for me, I have a few of my favorite things that I really love. And so number one for me is meditation or breath work in the morning, just taking 10 minutes out of my day to connect into the body. And then also journaling. And journaling for me is just a way of like consolidating my thoughts, putting it on paper. It's a really powerful practice to also like manifest or to work through things, to do shadow work, what have you. And so I think journaling is really powerful. And then another daily practice I really like doing is EFT tapping. And so EFT tapping is a really, really powerful tool. Basically, you have these different energy meridians in your body. So it's kind of like combining Chinese medicine with cognitive behavioral therapy. And so you're tapping on these acupressure points that are also nerve endings that will activate the basically activate the parasympathetic nervous system. So you're a little bit more calm, more relaxed, and then it also causes neuroplasticity. So this is your brain's ability to rewire and change. And so you can tap on these points, especially when, for me, when anxiety comes up or resistance comes up, I will just tap on these points and say like, I'm feeling insecure. And even though I'm feeling insecure, I completely love and accept myself. And so doing this as a daily practice is really helpful because it will kind of like dissipate the intensity of that feeling. And then you can go in and rewire a positive belief pattern. And so you can start with, I'm feeling really insecure. And then you can rewire in like, I'm feeling confident and capable and powerful. And so that's been like one of my most favorite tools over the last year or so.
That's inspiring. That is amazing. It makes me think of when I was in college. I was a theater major. I have 2 theater degrees. And before each class, one of my favorite teachers, Rachel Historn, which shout out Rachel, I love you. She's amazing. She would have us do a body check-in, and we would also do an emotional check-in. And we do like maybe 5 to 15 minutes of yoga based on how the whole class was feeling.
Mhm.
And it was so beneficial. And I really do believe like that first year before like 2019, before 2020 happened, before everything went to hell in a handbasket, I felt the healthiest I had ever been. She gave me so many tools, and I I can't thank her enough, because as I'm trying to recenter and get back into my body, because I have noticed, I was like, okay, I've healed a lot of my emotional brain
Mhm.
upsettedness about, the loss of my dad, the loss of both my grandfathers, the loss of everything that I knew. But without that loss, I couldn't have so much that I have now, and
Mhm.
trying to ground myself and be more grateful. And then I noticed, I was like, okay, I want to be more active again, because I used to do jazz and ballet for 2, 3 hours a day, every single day. And it's like, it's not that I don't like the way that I look, but I don't feel healthy. I don't feel safe in my body. I can't do what I used to be able to do that just came naturally. And I was like, okay, I need to start doing body check-ins. Where am I feeling pain? Like, what do I need to work out of my system? Where am I holding and storing trauma? And a lot of my trauma is in my hips, is
Mhm.
in my legs. Because also I fell down a flight of stairs in 2021, the beginning of 2021, and I ripped my gluteus maximus away from my pelvis and also tore a bunch of muscle, that the doctors didn't believe me, and that muscle got infected, and they had to do 7 surgeries to like reattach, do like a
Oh,
lot. And so I feel like my hips are out of alignment. I have so much stored like pain and then also scar tissue. And I'm like, okay, I may not be able to move like I used to, but I'm
mhm.
gonna get there. I'm
Yeah.
gonna do everything that I can to get back to
Mhm.
that, to stretch, to lengthen, to move, to push, to pull. And something she really taught us is like the different movements is like pushing and pulling and ring and lift. And she's like, your body has so many capabilities. Your muscles have so many capabilities. The only thing that's really limiting you is yourself. It's either you're not believing that you can do something,
Mhm.
or you are thinking you can do it, but you're not listening to your body. So when your body is giving you limitations of saying, maybe not yet, and you're pushing yourself too far, that's when you're not listening to your body. So she's like, you need to listen to, she called it your higher self, but also your body. What do I need today? What does my
Yeah.
body need today?
Mm.
And I've been trying to put that back into practice, and I feel so much better. Like,
Yay.
genuinely, I feel so much better and safe in
Mhm.
my body again. And I am like noticing the little changes of, it feels like my body is coming back to itself.
Mhm.
And I don't believe in, fat shaming or anything like that, because your body is the only body that you will ever have. This
Mhm.
is your vessel. So why not take care of it?
Mhm.
And it's not that I'm insecure about how I look, it's that this is not how I'm supposed to look. This
Mhm.
is, it's like, hmm, I'm noticing I can't do what I should be able to do. So I'm going to work and put myself at an advantage to be like, okay, not yet, but soon. And journaling is amazing. Oh,
Yeah.
Chloe, journaling is so amazing. And I started journaling when I was a child.
Mhm.
I was like 7. And so, like, my spelling is crap. Also, I'm dyslexic. So a lot of the letters are like upside down and bizarre. And I found one of my journals from when I was a kid. And that was like a whole nother level of healing, of recognizing what little Grace went through and how positive little Grace was about life. And
Wow.
going back to that of what little Chloe went through, do
Mhm.
you think little Chloe would be proud of big Chloe right now?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, definitely.
Hmm. And
Mhm.
that's so healing within itself, is because I think little Grace would be so excited that big Grace has pink hair. Like, holy
Mhm.
shit, that was like my whole dream as a kid. I was like, pink hair. And then also, being in the position that I am now, where I'm not fully healed yet, but I have so much potential to be healed. And the healing is like endless.
Yeah, the more you heal, the more you access deeper layers of healing, and it's a lifelong process that sometimes ebbs and flows too. Sometimes you have a great day and you're not triggered by anything and you feel free, and then other days you're like, oh my gosh, like why is this coming back up? And that's all a part of the process.
Hmm. That's a very good thing to point out, is there's ebbs and there's flows of, consciousness and also our healing. How do you stop yourself from feeling any form of overly critical about yourself and your own healing? How do you stop those negative self-talks?
Yeah, well, one of the biggest practices that I found lately to be really, really helpful is actually looking at myself as if I was my own daughter. And I'm like, okay, if my daughter was going through this right now, what would I say to her? And I'd be like, of course you're sad. Of course you're having anxiety. Like you're going through a breakup and not every day is going to be easy. And so I think that's a really helpful way to like zoom out and just have extreme amounts of compassion for yourself and also to have this level of like almost accountability too, because if you were a parent, you'd be like, okay, like that probably wasn't the best choice, maybe better choices next time. And so I think that's a really helpful like perspective to step into when you're having a bad day or when you need to have more compassion. It's like, what would you say to your child?
Mm, that's very true. I don't know. I don't know if I would want to have little me as a child, but also
Mhm.
that's oh, that's like a whole level of fear. It's like I was I am very chaotic, but I feel like I'm chaotic neutral. So it's like I don't know what to think of myself half the time.
But there's so much beauty in chaos and you might have to think of like maybe you have a tough time accessing your own self as a little child, but you could think of like maybe if you had your own child and like you as Grace now, how would you approach your own daughter? You know, you
Mm,
probably have so much wisdom and love to give her, and you'd be like, okay, like you're allowed to feel this way. Or something really helpful too is a best friend, because we say so many unkind things to ourselves and we judge ourselves so harshly. And the
mm,
things I say to myself, I would never go say to my best friend. And so maybe that's a helpful frame too, is maybe it's not a parent, maybe you're just acting as your own best friend and treating yourself that way.
mm. What advice do you have for someone who's just starting to learn about nervous system regulation?
Ooh, that's a really good question. I think what I would say is, two things. It is all about creating safety in the body. So coming back and listening to your body. So learning how to listen to the little nuances of, okay, does this thing make my body feel safe? Or does it make me feel agitated or afraid? And so getting really good at listening
Mm,
and understanding that it's just all about creating safety in the body. And you can create safety in so many ways and try a couple different things and you're going to realize, okay, these things make me feel safe. When I have a cup of tea before bed, when I hop in the bath, whatever it is if it makes you feel safe, do that. It doesn't have to be crazy breathwork journey or going for a hike in the Himalayas. It just has to be little things that make you feel safe, and that can be people, places, things. And so that's good to remember. And then I think the last piece is just have patience, because there's going to be days where you're looking at your life and you're healing and you're like, oh my gosh, I have made it so far. I'm so proud of myself. Like I feel really regulated. And then there's going to be days where you're like, I feel like an absolute mess and I'm chaos and all over the place.
mm,
Just trusting that it's a process and it takes time
mm.
and all the
That's
little
very
baby
true.
steps matter.
It's a process, it takes time.
Yeah. Mm.
Having patience is one of my biggest struggles in life.
Mhm.
Oh, it's like take your medicine. Okay.
Right? Oh God, I know. I think especially in the world of social media, we're so used to instant satisfaction. And so a lot of things in life take time, and sometimes they take years.
Mm, that is so real. Like the instant dopamine hit of social media. It's like, ah,
Hmm.
you get it immediately, instant gratification.
Hmm.
Amazon Prime, get it the
Yeah.
next day or the same day.
Hmm.
We forget that good things come to those who wait, and patience is one of the greatest virtues. I think that's something that I personally struggle with because not because I want things now, but because the anticipation gives me so much anxiety. The not
Hmm.
knowing gives me so much anxiety. I think that's something that I am trying to integrate in my life of being still.
Hmm.
Being still is very challenging, but it's not impossible. but it's something that I know I need to work on. Just being still. Oh, it's so hard.
It can be really, really hard for people that have experienced trauma. It can be really hard, or I have ADHD as well. So being present in my own body with myself and not having a cell phone or a TV screen to look at can be incredibly confronting. But I think if you make space for it and get better at it and just try to repeat that process, then it can be really fulfilling and you can get a lot of downloads in those moments and really connect to yourself. But like anything, it's just a process of getting more and more comfortable with it.
What are some common misconceptions about nervous system regulation that you'd like to clarify?
Ooh, I think one of the biggest things when it comes to nervous system regulation or especially anxiety is I think we like to think of it as like a top-down approach. So it's as if it starts in the mind and then changes the body, where it's really hard to shift fear and anxiety when you actually start with the mind. You know how, like, when you're spiraling on something and you're looping on it and you're getting more and more anxious, it's really hard to think your way into better thoughts. But actually, what you should do is take a bottom-up approach. So it's a lot easier to get into the body first and create calmness and peace in the body and then change your thoughts.
That's really good. Good point. When you are experiencing turmoil in your life, what has often been the first step for you to recognize that you are safe?
Mm. For me, it's bringing it back to the breath. The simplest thing is like breath can create so much safety, and breath is the one thing that no one can ever take from you. If you are still alive, you still have your breath, and you can control your nervous system with your breathing. And whether you're on a plane, at a conference, on a podcast, you can use that breath to bring yourself into a state of regulation. So, my absolute favorite tool is the physiological sigh. It's 2 sharp breaths into the nose and 1 long one out the mouth, like this. And if you have a wearable, you can literally see your heart rate slowing down immediately. And so you can also incorporate humming into that. So there's just a number of ways of getting back into the breath, and then that will help you get into a little bit more of a calmer state where then you can start processing or making other decisions. So that's the first thing I do is when something crazy happens, when I'm starting to feel anxious, I'm like, okay, stop and breathe.
That's very interesting because I'm a singing teacher.
Mm,
I'm a vocal coach, and breathing is one of the key foundations to singing. And something that I teach all of my students, I'm going to give you guys today, is called box breathing or breathing in square. And you do it for intervals of either 4, 6, 8, 12 going on. And so you take your inhale for 4 seconds, then you hold for 4 seconds, then you exhale for 4 seconds, then you hold for 4 seconds, and you increase that interval each time. And what it does, it helps you, again, regulate your nervous system, slow your heart rate. It brings awareness to your breath and how your body holds breath. And then it also improves your lung capacity, because that's a really important thing for singers, is our lung capacity. And it's a great way for diaphragmatic breathing, because for those that don't know, anatomy lesson, your lungs don't move on their own. Your lungs are actually moved by this big balloon-like muscle called your diaphragm that sits right underneath your lungs, but on top of all of your organs, and essentially pushes those organs out of the way so that your lungs can fully expand. Because the only thing that is keeping your lungs from expanding are your ribs and the little muscles in between called your intercostals and your diaphragm. So your diaphragm and your intercostals move, and your ribs move out of the way like bucket handles. So if you're watching us on YouTube, you can see, but I'll try to describe for those of us listening. Picture you are raising your fists up in the air to punch somebody square in the jaw that's taller than you. As you move your elbows out, and back in and out and back in. That's essentially what your rib cage is doing. And so with breath work as a singer, I try to get my students to go into their bodies, be very aware of how their bodies are holding the air so that you can utilize your bodies to your advantage, because your body is your instrument in singing. And so it's like as we are taking that inhale, you're moving your rib cage out of the way so that your diaphragm can then push down and move all your organs out of the way. So you have a belly. We love little bellies. You have your belly pushing out. Everything is either moving up or pushing out of the way so that your lungs can drop and fully expand. And then when you are exhaling, your rib cage is coming back down and you are not sucking in, but your abdomen is pushing all of the air out, and your diaphragm is going back up so that you can exhale. And that hold kind of leaves you in a state of, I can't move. It's almost like you're ready. And it's those holds are really where most people do struggle, is to hold the breath and that anticipation. And I think that's really where you start to strengthen your muscles and your mind of the waiting. Because that's the part where it gets hard, because you want to exhale so that you can get more air. But it's a really good exercise not only to build your lung capacity, but also build awareness of how your body is working, because breath is something that it's a part of your parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system, something that we can control, but also that is almost mindless, that we do just naturally. It's really important. I love that you pointed out breath work as your way of just centering yourself, because it's something that I have a little bit of expertise in.
Absolutely. I think you nailed the description there. That was awesome.
Yeah. Do you consider yourself a creative person?
Yes, very much so.
What creative activities do you use to help you regulate your nervous system?
I would say drawing for me or painting is probably my favorite. It can
What
be so meditative.
Yeah. What is your favorite type of brush to use?
Oh my gosh, I'm not sophisticated enough to know what type of brush I use. I have like the cheapest little paint set, but sometimes I have this like little mini easel and setup, and I just like when I'm having anxiety, it feels like it connects you to the present moment. And it just, yeah, regulates your nervous system, you're calmer. Don't have a lot of skills in painting. I would say my skills are a little bit better with drawing, but it's just something to, yeah, bring you back into the moment.
It's a very good way to point out. When you are talking to people that you coach,
Mhm.
what tools or apps do you recommend?
Yeah, so I think one of the biggest things I always recommend is if you are on a nervous system regulation journey, is it's really helpful to actually like track your data and your progress and see what's working for you. And the best way to do that is tracking heart rate variability. And it's just calculating the number of seconds in between your heartbeats. And so you want your heart rate variability to be between 50 and 100. If it's over 100, that's absolutely incredible and you're killing it. And so you can track this with an Aura Ring, with a Whoop, with an Apple Watch, and that will just show up on your data. And so that's really helpful when you start implementing these new tools, is you'll see that on average, your heart rate variability will be improving. And so that's a really great way to be like, oh, well, I added meditation in, and now on a daily basis, my HRV is improving. And for me, other apps that I find really helpful is I just really like the meditation breathwork apps. So I really like using Calm. That's probably one of my favorite ones, or Headspace. And then I also use breathwork a lot, and a really good one is called Othership. And so if you want to do longer kind of somatic healing breathwork journeys, I use really beautiful sounds And so that's something I really like working with as well.
Mm, That's so cool. I also have an Apple Watch. Ooh, I was just like looking at my little heart rate. It is 62.
Nice. Okay, we're doing above 50. We're good.
Vibes. Look at it go. And I like the little animation. Oh, come back. It's just a little heart. It's just
Aw.
going. It's so precious. I love it. That's so cool. Yeah, when I was really traumatized in 2020, I started wearing my Apple Watch again because my dad, that was one of the last gifts he gave me,
Mm.
was an Apple Watch, and he was excited about it because of the walkie-talkie like app.
Mhm.
Because he was like, okay, we're going, I think we were at Disney World. He's like, I'm gonna talk to you guys with walkie-talkies. Like, you get an actual walkie-talkie and then you get your walkie-talkie app.
Oh, fun.
And it was so much fun. And when I put my watch back on for like the first time, the walkie-talkie app was on, and it was my dad. And in the accident, his Apple Watch was taken off of him by the paramedics, and they had lost it in the hospital. And so I used the walkie-talkie app to find his watch.
Oh, wow.
And I remember looking at it, trying to like get any of the bio data off of it to see like if my dad died, and he did. He did die several times. Like, it read his heart rate as 0 several times. And it was crazy to see how he kept fighting to come back, how his heart rate would skyrocket from 0 to skyrocket to get faster and faster. And that was very interesting to look at, because, now he is passed on. And I think essentially he did give up, or his body did give up on him, one or the
Mhm.
other. But he did fight for a very long time to stay alive. And how strong his willpower was something that really reinforced to me of like, I need to have a strong willpower as well to keep fighting to stay here. Because
Mhm.
something I really struggled with was, because everything was so dysregulated, I started having seizures, and no one knew why. There wasn't, something necessarily wrong. They did the MRI and a CT scan. They're like, there's nothing here saying that you should be having seizures, but I was having them. And it wasn't until I started healing a lot of my trauma that they just stopped. And I think it was my body essentially being like, we need to reset, we need to stop, because I just kept going, and I never took a break. I really want to caution those of us that feel like resting is weakness. It's not.
Mhm.
If you feel anxious and you need to sit down and you need to take a break, that is strength. That is your body preserving itself. And you are worth taking care of. You are worth being supported and loved. And you and your body deserve recognition,
Mhm.
because there's only going to be one you. You
Mhm.
will never get another body. So taking care of it, self-love, is one of the best things that you can do, not only for yourself, but for others. Because in my mind, Chloe, you are a testament of self-love and endurance. And I'm so grateful to have you on and have you sharing what you've gone through, because it's intense. What you've gone through is very significant, and yet you've transmuted that pain into purpose and trying to not only heal yourself, but heal others. And that's commendable. And I'm really encouraged by you and your story.
Thank you. Oh, I appreciate that. That's so sweet.
Yeah. How has your daily routine changed due to your experiences?
Oh my gosh. Well, I would say my daily routine started off in my younger 20s, like very chaotic. Um, I didn't have much of a daily routine, and anxiety and panic attacks were very much so a part of my daily routine, and poor sleep and eating unhealthy and also just not listening to my body. I used to be somebody that I was playing university volleyball, I was studying to get into medical school, and so I would just neglect and ignore the signs of my body that I needed to rest. And so it was this constant spinning wheel of just burning myself out and exhausting myself. And now my routine has changed so much where I am very in tune with my body. I start my mornings a little bit later, and I'm so fortunate that I work for myself and that I can, but I make sure that I have time for me basically every single morning to set myself up for success, to take it a little bit slower, to meditate, to journal. And then I've tapped into really listening to my body. And so on days where I'm stressed or I need a little extra rest, I give myself that grace whenever I can. And I'm also, gotten really, really tapped into getting really good sleep. I think that's something that's become really important to me because if you're not sleeping, like, everything else isn't really going to go your way. And so that's something that's very important. So, not checking my phone before going to bed and dimming the lights and just setting myself up for as much sleep success as possible. Those are some little things that have changed a lot in my daily routine.
Hmm. Speaking directly to our listeners, what would be your message about healing from trauma?
Oh, I would say my biggest message when it comes to healing trauma is like the only way through is love. And so that's encompasses so many things, but that's self-love and that's compassion. That's learning to love the world around you and even trying to look at your trauma from a place of love and how can I take this trauma and how can I turn this pain, this excruciating insurmountable pain into love? How do I transmute that into love? And so I think that would be the message that I have for everyone.
Mm. Do you have any resources or recommendations that you'd like to share?
Hmm. Let me think. Resources and recommendations. I think my biggest resources and recommendations would be um, trying a lot of different things to bring safety in the body, but I really recommend breath. I think if you can learn how to breathe, that will literally change your life because that will help you in almost every circumstance and situation in your life. If you can breathe through it, whether that's nervousness or excitement or social anxiety, learning how to breathe is one of the greatest tools that exists, in my opinion.
Hmm. How can I support you?
Well, I think this was a very powerful and impactful conversation, and I would love to have more of them. So that would be fantastic.
Yeah, I'd love to
Yeah.
have you on my podcast again, and I'd love to like connect with you on my own. Be like,
Mhm.
hello, hello, Chloe. Hello.
Yeah, I think, for me, like I just love getting useful tools and information out there. And so I'm like, if, you need any support in your community, if you want me to like do a little breath work or EFT tapping session with any of your community, like I'd be happy to do that with you. And like I just want like this knowledge and wisdom to get out there and help people because yeah, there's just so much wisdom and healing in the body that I think people don't know about. And one of my biggest things that makes me really sad is there's so many people who are struggling with anxiety, depression, PTSD, and they're just immediately medicated. And I do think medication has some like so much benefit, especially if you're in a place of I can't deal with this on my own. But I also think that a lot of people aren't shown these other tools. And so I just want to be someone that can show people that there's an alternative route if you are ready to explore it, that there are so many other tools out there that are accessible to you and that don't require medication.
Hmm. That's true. That is very true. And everyone's biology is very different. So there is no catch-all medication that's going to work for everyone. And most of the time, they're just guessing. They're just
Yeah.
guessing. And that can really mess you up as well. Like
Hmm.
something that I would tell all of the listeners is listen to your doctor, but also listen to you. If you feel like a medication is not helping you, please don't stop taking it cold turkey, but please get in with your doctor and be like, hey, I need to advocate for myself and say, this is not working for me. Help. Some little wisdom that my dad would tell me all the time is, if you're asking for help, the worst thing anybody else could say to you is no, but you'll still be in the same position that you were in before. Nothing has really changed. And just keep going, keep asking other people for help, because you will find people. You will. It just may take a while, but don't get discouraged. Just keep going. Like, I think I read something somewhere that Walt Disney went to over 300 individual banks to try and ask for a loan for him to create, his animation studio. And it took over 300 different banks for him to finally get that loan. And he created a multi-billion-dollar empire.
Wow.
Don't give up. Don't give up on yourself. It may take time. And, I'm preaching to the choir here, because I have to also not give up on myself, because times like these right now is very discouraging. I'm a small business owner. I make crystal beaded jewelry for my living, other than, the podcast, which the podcast doesn't make any money yet. One day it will, manifesting that. But
Absolutely.
the bracelets, the vendor events that I've been doing haven't been going very well. The event that I just did, I did not make any sales at all. And I paid over $85 to be there because the event coordinator did not advertise it, which sucks. All the vendors there, none of us made any money. And, times are tough. So I know that, like, my bracelets, even though they're like $12 each, are technically a luxury. They're not a necessity. And so I'm like, okay, be mindful of that and be like, okay, it'll get better. I'm not going to be discouraged. I'm not going to give up on my business. I'm just going to keep it pushing, and the next one will be better. And if the next one isn't better, then the next one after that will be better, and just continue to make and create. Because if I give up, then there's no more potential for growth. What else am I going to do? It's a journey, and you deserve to be on your journey and walk your journey. Okay. And another little wisdom my dad would give me: if you're playing a video game and you're not running into adversaries and villains and mods, and mobs, are you actually going the right way in the video game? No, you're not. You're going to run into challenges. And you just have to keep going. You got to defeat those mobs and just keep going. You'll get there. Thank you so much for sharing with us, Chloe. And I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me on. I'm so grateful that we had the chance to meet and connect. And yeah, this was a really beautiful experience. So thank you for having me.
If you're watching us over on YouTube, here are our memes of the week, carefully curated by those amazing people, over on our Discord server. Now let's get into those memes. the end of every episode, we spin our wheel of emotions to learn a new feeling and how it correlates to trauma. So let's spin this wheel, shall we? Ooh, here we go. Let's make it a really good one. Critical. Okay, it landed on critical, skeptical, and sarcastic. Okay. So, trauma, critical. We become really hypercritical of ourselves when we're experiencing trauma, especially if, our nervous system is dysregulated and we're not having a quote appropriate response to the situation. But I want to challenge us to think about it differently. If your body is responding to a situation, it's responding the way it feels like it has to. And sometimes, especially for me, say my friends are taking something that I said the wrong way and they're really upset by it. And instead of me lashing out at them, instead of me being hypercritical of myself, of being like, oh crap, I said the wrong thing, they're taking it the wrong way, instead, I need to approach with compassion and understanding. Because we can defend ourselves all day, every day. But until we take a step back and be like, okay, this is how I was perceived. This is how my friend took what I said. Acknowledge how they're feeling. Let them feel their feelings. Let yourself feel your feelings of being frustrated. Take a step back and then come back together when you are ready to understand one another. Because from my perspective, I'm only ever hypercritical of myself when I feel like I am being judged unfairly. And then instead of, lashing out at the other person and being angry, I turn inward in a bad sense and become angry with myself. And I have to stop and be okay and be like, okay, we're going to solve this issue. It may take a while to solve, but we're going to solve it. And I need to accept that maybe I've hurt someone and do my best to not hurt them the same way again. Your reactions to certain things are reality. That is your reality. But they may not always be factual. They may not always be factual, especially for the given circumstance. And so that's when our emotions need to be acknowledged, felt, recognized, and then taken a step back and being like, okay, what is the context of this situation and how can I move forward? If we start thinking of how can I move forward from this, you will start to find more solutions for your problems and for your trauma. And I just want to give a quick thank you to all of you guys who are subscribed to the podcast, and especially I love you to all of you guys who are on our Discord server. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for staying along to the end of the podcast. That really helps me out a lot. If you haven't already, please hit that like button and subscribe if you're watching us on YouTube. And if you're listening to us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, please rate the show. That really, really helps us out a lot. If you feel compelled to, please join us over on Patreon, get a bracelet, get a sticker, share the podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Remember, you are capable of a fulfilling life in spite of your circumstances and your trauma. May you rise again from the ashes and be filled with peace, hope, love, joy, and understanding. I'll see you guys in the next episode. Goodbye. Mwah.